What is up, my aesthetic boys? It's Fresh, back with another video. You've watched and you've waited, and finally I'm proud to present the only episode of r/THANOS SNAP REVENGE. Steal my money? Lie to me? Try to fire me? I will take your job. This isn't my story, but one of my coworkers. We'll call him Cash. This is from Cash's first job before we met. He's always been a very hard worker, but he learned at his first job that it's not uncommon for some bosses to try to take advantage of this, and most people where I live tend to learn this pretty quick, which is a shame since there are still very good bosses out there, such as our boss at the moment. Cast is Cash, or K, and asshole boss, B. Cash's first job was at a small town shop near where he lived. His work contract was part-time for 16 hours a week with occasional overtime. After a couple months, he started getting more and more overtime until he was working 50 plus hours per week. A couple of his coworkers thought this was strange. Where was the money for all this overtime coming from? They recommended he start writing down all of the hours he worked. He collected about 2 months worth of hours and noticed that he wasn't being paid for at least 30 hours every month. He confronted boss about this, but he kept denying it and saying that he must have been writing his hours down wrong. When Cash asked for a copy of all his clocking in and out records, B destroyed the printer, obviously trying to hide what he had been doing. This is where the revenge begins. Boss had a friend who worked in the tills, and Cash started to notice that every time Boss would do his shopping, he would take a huge trolley of shopping to his friend's till, but only end up paying 10 to 15 for all of it. Every time Cash saw this, he would write down the time and till number. While this was happening, Cash was still trying to get the money that he was owed. Nothing too crazy compared to other stories on here, but he said it was roughly £4,000 to £6,000 from what he could work out. Eventually, Boss suggested to Cash that he should clock in on his days off and go home and just come back later to clock out again. Cash was suspicious about this immediately, but soon heard from his coworkers that Boss was planning on getting him fired. Cash put one and one together and quickly realized what was happening. So, instead, Cash recorded the next conversation with his boss and managed to get him to repeat all of it. Now armed with proof of Boss stealing and proof of Boss lying to get him fired, he went to the big bosses of the company and explained everything. Nothing was done immediately, but one of the higher-ups agreed to meet with him to discuss what had been happening. Fun fact, they just so happened to meet in the cafe of the store we both work in now. Cash handed over all the proof that he had collected, the recordings, the record of his boss's purchases, and even explained how he had been not paying him for his hours. After a check of the purchase records and found he was stealing hundreds of pounds worth of goods every week, Boss was fired the next day. And due to his hard work and reliability, they even offered K the now vacant position of the boss, which he took. Cash was eventually able to get half of what he was owed in the end too. Yeah, the ending might seem a little bit far-fetched, the fact that Cash, who was wronged, was able to take the now vacant boss position opened by the boss who was doing the wronging, but, you know, any story where there's an asshole boss, you kinda have to believe it. There are just too many of them out there. Take my flight home, I'll take your money. As a new lieutenant in the Army a few years back, I was tasked to be a guest observer, evaluator, at the National Training Center in California. Basically, it's a large desert with small towns for military units to train in before deploying. On day 29, once all evaluations were complete, I was set to fly back to Texas and return to my unit. In the observer controller barracks, I was approached by a colonel, now known as Dumbass Officer. Dumbass Officer, LT Bucks, I'm taking your place on the flight back to Fort XXX. Sir, you're part of the training unit. All of the observers are leaving on this flight and my bags have already been sent to the airfield. I don't have any changes of clothes. Oh, you'll be okay for a few days. Officers must innovate to be successful. And innovate I did. When I returned to my post, I was unable to locate my gear, including body armor, computer, cold weather gear, and other items due to the fact that they flew in 2 days before me on the flight I was kicked off. I informed my command and they initiated an inquiry called FLIPL, or Financial Liability Investigation of Property Loss, in which an investigator is required to determine the reason for lost government property. The investigating officer determined that I was not at fault and that dumbass officer abused his authority to return home earlier. Additionally, since I was left at the training center for over 30 days, I was due additional pay for being away for over a month, which amounted to over $1,000. Dumbass officer was found liable for over $7,000 worth of my equipment and had to pay for it, which I subsequently found and turned into the central issue facility. I was reissued a new set of kit. I bought myself a nice chair and put the rest into my TSP, government equivalent of a 401k, with the extra temporary duty or TDY money, and this dumbass officer got reduced to a staff job. Well, there's nothing that I like more than two particular things on this subreddit. One is military revenge, and especially military compliance, because those stories are always entertaining as heck. And second, karmic revenge. Revenge that doesn't come unwarranted. This officer literally broke rules. I mean, he was abusing his power, he caused multiple people undue stress, lost a guy his gear, made him wait 2 days, cost the government $1,000. I mean, he deserved all of the liability that he has coming his way because he quite literally put it into action for himself. All OP did was give it a little nudge by following exactly what the rules say to do. He reported the items, they discovered what had actually happened, and, well, all's well that ends well. A little over a month ago, I promised you guys a subreddit. That subreddit is called r/THANOS SNAP REVENGE. Now, that's not a real subreddit, nor should it be, although I think a couple knockoffs were created after that post. But that doesn't mean there isn't a THANOS SNAP REVENGE story. And so today, after all these weeks of waiting, I finally bring you the one and only r/THANOS SNAP REVENGE. Hurt me? Well, I'll hurt you back. It's balanced, as everything should be. Throwaway account for soon-to-be obvious reasons. I know some people think I went too far here, but let me explain before you jump to any conclusions. We'll start with a bit of background before we really get into the revenge. I'm currently a senior in high school, and I've been dating the same guy for over 3 years. For the sake of anonymity, I'll call him Mike during this story. Well, like I said, Mike and I have been together for a long time. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, but I was closer to him than any person in the entire world. You tend to develop a bit of an emotional dependency when you talk to the same person constantly for 3 years. Anyhow, we go to the same high school. People just kind of know us as that couple because we've been together for so long that we're basically part of each other's social identities. I've never been the most popular girl, but Mike recently became friends with some of the more popular guys in our grade, largely because of his participation in multiple varsity sports. This, I guess, is when things started to go downhill a bit. Over the past few months, since December maybe, it feels like we've started to drift apart. He stays out late with his friends, doesn't always respond to my texts, and just generally has seemed less interested in spending time with me than he used to. I get it, relationships change as time passes, but I could feel that something was up. I tried not to let my fears change the way I acted, but it was getting harder by the day. And then, suddenly, everything came crashing down. I had gone on a road trip kind of excursion with 2 of my best friends for spring break, and honestly, I was a bit nervous about leaving Mike. Everything seemed normal when I kissed him goodbye, so I tried to put my irrational fears out of my head and enjoy the trip that I'd been planning for literal years. Except, one night, things changed a bit. Mike told me he was going to a party and then stopped responding to any text without any warning or message of any kind. I tried to tell myself that his phone must have died or maybe he went back home and fell asleep. But then I started to check Snapchat. I saw at least 3 or 4 stories from mutual friends of ours who were at this party, and all of them at some point showed Mike, even once with his phone out, recording something. I tried texting him again, but still no response. Half an hour later, no response. It was late, my friends were asleep and I was really starting to freak out. I tried sleeping, but I couldn't get my mind off this damned party. Finally, I checked Snapchat again, and while I didn't have any response from my boyfriend, I saw something that actually stopped my breath short. In someone's story, I see Mike making out with someone. I didn't even recognize her, probably not from our school, I guess. I felt like the girls from our school knew well enough that he was in a relationship, but more importantly, he should have known well enough that he was in a relationship. I didn't know what to do. Didn't really want to wake my friends, but also didn't want to be alone. I wanted to be in my own bed. I don't know. I don't really remember exactly what I thought. If anyone out there has ever caught their significant other cheating on them, I guess maybe you can empathize with just how gutted I was. I get that it sounds stupid to some people, but that relationship was just about all I knew, and I just watched it go up in flames at 2 a.m. alone in some random motel in southern Florida. Less than ideal circumstances all around, really. Instead of focusing on the pain or the feelings of betrayal, I decided to focus on revenge. How I was going to get this asshole back. I lay there wide awake until the sun came up, just thinking. Morning comes, then afternoon, and finally I get a text from Mike. No mention of anything out of the ordinary, no ominous, "we need to talk" type message, just business as usual. He said the party was alright, but nothing unusual. Well, I knew otherwise. By the time my friends and I returned from our spring break trip, I knew what I was going to do. In the meantime, though, I needed it to be a secret that I was aware of the party's events. Fortunately, since I wasn't particularly popular, nobody really reached out to me about anything. Nobody outside seemed to care, which just worked out better for my plan. The fact that we'd been dating so long made this feeling of betrayal so much harder to handle, but it also gave me every tool I needed to get the revenge I wanted. I knew everything about Mike because we told each other everything. I knew his likes, his dislikes, his greatest fears and aspirations, and, most importantly, I knew his deepest insecurities, and I planned to use that to my advantage. Over the next week, up until about last weekend, I was getting everything set up. For starters, I needed to make him lose something. Not like a pencil or even a phone. Something emotional. Something that couldn't be replaced. So the next time I went over to his house, I took his baseball glove. Not the one he uses now. I mean the one he learned to throw a baseball with. The one he kept on a shelf in his room next to his superhero collectibles, almost like a trophy. Not just any baseball glove, his baseball glove. Well, now my baseball glove. That was just a warm-up though. I moved on to bigger things. Family pictures, a favorite pillow, the things that I knew he would never suspect I could have taken, but would build up an overwhelming sense of emotional loss. Now that I had my collection of prized possessions, it came time for the big finale. I was going to invite him over for an end-of-year bonfire and burn it all in front of him. All of it, just up in flames. Or at least, that's what I wanted to do. At first. That night back in Florida when I first found out. That was the thought that went through my head, was that I wanted to hurt him more than he had ever hurt me. But as time passed, I realized I didn't really want that. Whether or not I liked him now or cared for him at all, I loved the person that he was and the person that had been by my side for 3 years. But let's be clear here. The story isn't over. My eyes were on a bigger target. Those items I took? They were more replaceable than I'd fantasized. The idea of some kind of burning finale was so romantic, I guess, but it really wasn't pragmatic, and it would only make me look bad. Pictures of digital backups. I needed to destroy something he could never have back. Finally, it hit me. I knew what I needed to do. The perfect revenge. Nobody would think any less of me. He would feel that gut-wrenching loss that I did, and hopefully, I would be able to move on with my life. As this past week comes around, he stops going on Instagram. He stops watching YouTube videos. In fact, Mike avoids pretty much every kind of online media. Why? Well, of course, because the largest movie in the world was about to open. And Mike, being a bigger Marvel fan than anyone I'd care to mention, wanted to make sure his movie watching experience was as pure as possible. The revenge. Step 1, testing the waters. Mike, being the super fan he is, already had tickets to see Endgame the night it released, a Thursday. I wanted to make him wait a bit. So I casually mentioned to his mother while I was over at their house on Monday that he had a big test coming up on Friday. Well, Mike's grades had been slipping since baseball season had started, and I knew that his mom wasn't going to let him out of the house the night before an exam. Sure enough, later that night, I got an irritated text from Mike complaining all about how his mean mommy wasn't going to let him see the movie on Thursday, and he had to change his plans to Friday. The weekend was already sold out. Dejected but vigilant nonetheless, Mike seemed to crack down even further on his digital isolation. He did not want to leave anything to chance. Nothing would spoil this movie for him. Well, nothing except me. Step 2. Research. Mike honestly did have an exam Friday morning, but I didn't. No, sir, I was free as a bird Thursday night. So I went by myself to a theater a couple towns over, didn't want anyone from my school to see me, and I sat down in a leather recliner to watch the climax of an entire franchise that I honestly couldn't care less about. I think Mike had made me watch the first Avengers movie or something, but I didn't really pay attention. I didn't need to know much, though the movie was pretty self-explanatory. It was easy to see when the climax was coming, and for about 15 minutes I held my phone up to chest level and pressed record on my dimly lit iPhone screen. Step 3. The setup. I had done my research, I had my ammunition, and I had pushed Mike's showtime back a whole day. Everything was going to plan. Now I needed to wait. Act the sympathetic girlfriend. Believe me, I'd be putting my acting chops to the test soon enough. Friday comes and Mike's day has arrived. He can't seem to talk about anything other than this damn superhero movie, but I humor him. After all, it's only one day. One last day. Overnight, I had cut down my cell phone video to about 10 seconds. 10 seconds that succinctly and utterly ruins the plot of this blockbuster film. Armed with this deadly file, I lay in wait. As his movie time approaches, I began to get nervous. Was I waiting too long? Had I messed this entire plan up? As soon as he had texted me that he was at the theater, I moved into the fourth and final phase of my revenge. Step 4. Endgame. Once I got the text that he had gotten to the theater, I started texting him that something was wrong, that something bad had happened. And, well, that part was truthful, even if it wasn't recent. He told me that he was already sitting down and asked if it could wait until after the movie. Seriously? Come on, man. I told him in no uncertain terms that this was urgent and that I needed to talk to him on the phone. Finally, he acquiesced. Told me he'd call me in a second when he could walk out of the theater by the bathrooms. Ring ring, ring ring. This was it. Go time. I worked myself up a bit before answering the call, trying to make a convincing phone hysteria as best I could. I might not be winning any Oscars, but it did the job. Mike, I can't believe what just happened. How could this happen? Mike, quite confused at this point. Whoa, slow down. What happened? Talk to me. It's... I stutter my words through fake sobs. It's what? What happened? No, Mike, didn't Jess, a random mutual friend, tell you? I thought she said she would text you too. Tell me what? I have no idea what's going on, but I'm starting to freak out a bit. Oh, okay. Still between sobs. I'll just send it to you. And I sent him an unnamed MP4 file with a blank preview window. It was about 10 seconds long. I know he watched it because he began to stutter. Bad. Real bad. I didn't know whether to be upset or surprised or what. I don't even think he could take it. He didn't know what I did it for, or even if I did it intentionally. But either way, I did it. More than 10 years of superhero movies, 22 in total, hundreds of hours spent agonizing over fictional characters, years of anticipation, weeks of painstakingly avoiding spoilers. And he was there. He was sitting in the theater finally. He could taste it like the $8 popcorn he had just bought, waiting to see how it all ended. And then, there it went, in a 10-second MP4 file on a 4-inch iPhone screen in a crowded hallway. All those years, all those hours, all that anticipation. Gone. Done. He can print a new picture. He can get a new action figure. Hell, he can get a new girlfriend for all I care. But he can never forget that one moment. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. Be sure to subscribe for more daily Reddit content. Drop a like if you liked the video, and I will see you all tomorrow.